I just want to talk a bit about a ruling from a federal judge in Tennessee that has my blood starting to boil inside my veins. And it actually harkens back to yesterday's show when we were talking about the slow as molasses glacial pace at which the Trump administration is at least attempting to throw Hamas supporter Mahmoud Khalil out of this country. He was detained for a while. They were trying to deport him. He is a Syrian national who has a green card, so legal permanent residency status, but that is not permanent, right? You are not guaranteed to keep your green card forever. He has not attained citizenship. And Secretary Rubio, and we talked to Andy McCarthy about this, under his authority said the presence of this man in our country poses a threat to our foreign policy, national security. We want him out. The green card's revoked. So that's Rubio's position. But the whole thing has gotten bogged down in due process. And I'll at least say this. That guy, Mr. Khalil, at the very least is a legal permanent resident of the country. He's married to an American. He's got a new kid. Due process, even when it's frustrating, is not optional in this country. Due process is a good thing. I think sometimes there's perhaps an abuse of it where it gets dragged out to prevent reasonable justice from being meted out. But overall, I'm not going to sit here and whine about due process. I do think that it should be relatively easy to take supporters of terrorists and remove them from our borders, broadly speaking. And Mahmoud Khalil is that. We played the clip yesterday. He did a CNN interview. He's making the rounds. He was on Capitol Hill meeting with a bunch of Democrats. He was one of the many people that they decided to idolize on the left and turn his cause into theirs. A man who was asked on CNN 3 separate times if he would denounce and condemn Hamas, and every time he deflected because he didn't want to do it because he supports Hamas. At best, you can call him a Hamas sympathizer, but it's beyond that. He is a Hamas supporter. He's a terrorism supporter. He and his ugly mob have been bullying and threatening and violating the rights of Jewish students at Columbia University for a long time. Columbia just had to agree to a massive, painful settlement, by the way, because of this. And boy, do they deserve it. We'll get some details on that on tomorrow's show, but that's some breaking news today. Mahmoud Khalil was a central pillar of that nasty mob, which didn't just engage in very objectionable and odious speech, it also engaged in criminal mob behavior, criminal conduct, taking over buildings, right? Trespassing and beyond. They held some custodians hostage for a while, sort of appropriate that you had hostage taking supporters, right? Hamas apologists themselves taking hostages. So it was criminal behavior, not just objectionable speech. But there was plenty of that too. Mahmoud Khalil's group has called openly in writing for the obliteration. They use a lot of colorful language, but the annihilation of Western civilization itself. In case you thought it was just about Israel, it's not. It almost never is. There's anti-Semitism at play in many cases. There's anti-Americanism at play in many cases. And that's the toxic stew in which Mahmoud Khalil has festered for a very long time. And as Secretary Rubio has pointed out, if he, with all of his background, what he said, what he's done, if he applied to enter the country right now, he would be refused. He would be turned away. And yet, he is still here. We'll see if that changes, but I think it's frustrating to have someone who so clearly hates our country and what we stand for, and is a bigot, and is a terrorism supporter. He at least had the opportunity to lie on CNN and say, oh no, of course I condemn Hamas. They almost never do. Have you noticed? the pro-Palestinian Hamas brigade, they don't even give lip service to condemning Hamas because they view them as heroes of the resistance. Glory be to the martyrs. Globalize the Intifada. From the river to the sea. These are violent, genocidal slogans embodied in the barbaric evil that is Hamas. They're the ones that carry it out, at least over there. And unfortunately, we're seeing the globalization of it over here. So that's part of what got me pretty riled up yesterday. And then came this ruling from a federal judge. I'll read from the CBS story for now. A federal judge on Wednesday barred federal immigration authorities from immediately taking Kilmar Abrego Garcia, remember him, the Maryland father, into custody once he is released from criminal confinement in Tennessee, and ordered the Trump administration to provide him 72 hours notice if it plans to initiate proceedings to remove him to a country that is not his place of origin. Because remember, they can't deport him to that country, El Salvador, because of an old judge's ruling, because the concern was that Kilmar Abrego Garcia would be subject to reprisals, violent reprisals from a rival gang back home in El Salvador, which unto itself is some evidence that he is a gang member. And apparently there was allegations that he was somewhat implicated in and involved in a murder back home. The Justice Department here has a huge, long indictment against him that they've rolled out, including solicitation of child pornography to a mass human smuggling operation that he was a part of. This is an extremely bad guy. A credibly accused on multiple occasions spousal abuser, a wife beater. There were, on numerous occasions, more than one occasion, restraining orders filed against him by his wife because he was physically abusing her. You have a convicted human trafficker saying, oh yeah, I hired him all the time to do the trafficking. There's video of him in a traffic stop actually in Tennessee where he was smuggling a bunch of people across the country. They had no identification. They had no luggage with them. They were all packed into a car. And that car belonged to the convicted human smuggler. So you add all of this up and then pile on top of it that he is an illegal immigrant. It beggars belief that we are having a giant legal fight about whether or not we as a country can kick that person out immediately. Now, I feel like I had the intellectual honesty throughout this whole fight. And I think Kilmar Abrego Garcia matters because just like Democrats turned Mahmoud Khalil into a cause celeb, remember Senate Democrats on the Judiciary Committee put out a tweet saying, free Khalil, free Mahmoud Khalil, free, free, free. It's like they took that cause up. They also took this cause up. Senator Chris Van Hollen went down there for the margaritas with this guy. Never had the time to meet with the family of an actual citizen constituent murdered in Maryland by an illegal immigrant led into the country under the Biden administration with the complicity of Van Hollen. Right? That was not something on Van Hollen's radar, but he would fly all the way down to El Salvador to make sure this Maryland father, quote unquote, was doing okay. Sorry, Rachel Morin. Sorry, Rachel Morin's family. This battle over Kilmar Abrego Garcia is emblematic of a wider fight. If the left is going to do everything in its power to protect the Kilmar Abrego Garcias of the world from deportation, then there's basically no limit to how much they will aid and abet illegal immigration. This is a terrible poster child for their cause. As a credibly accused gang member, wife beater, human trafficker, implicated in murder, who solicited allegedly child pornography, who is in the country illegally. Like, it takes a very long, seemingly run-on sentence just to capture the scope of the criminal and violent criminal allegations against this guy. But because the Trump administration wrongly, as I was saying, deported him to El Salvador because of that previous order, I was of the opinion that they had to follow the law and bring him back, which the Supreme Court effectively said they had to do, and then eventually they did it. This was treated almost as a victory. I don't view it as such. You can say it is following the letter of the law, or a nation of law is fine, but I also said he should never walk as a free man on American soil ever again. If you can't deport him to El Salvador based on that previous ruling, deport him anywhere else. You got to hold him in Alligator, Alcatraz, wherever you got to put him. He should not be free in the United States ever. Figure it out and get him out of here. But here we have this federal judge, Judge Paula Zinis, who has decided that she's going to try to tell ICE, federal authorities, that they cannot even take him into custody after he's released from the current status of criminal confinement, and to provide him 72 hours notice if they're going to initiate the proceedings to remove him to another country. Fine, I don't have a problem with that. Let him know, like, hey, Kilmar, you're behind bars. Heads up, we're going to throw you out of the country in 72 hours. Let your family know they can meet you if they want or whatever. I don't know if the wife wants to be near him or not, given what he's done to her repeatedly. But that's their family matter. But he should never be free again. And yet, she has ruled, this judge, federal judge, that the Salvadoran national should be released from custody, out of federal custody, under the conditions that will be set by another judge. It won't happen immediately, but this has been an order of release. Federal judge saying he's in confinement right now, and no federal government, when he gets out of the current confinement, you cannot snap him up and confine him elsewhere. This just boggles my mind. He's in the country illegally. That unto itself is enough of a basis to detain him, to put him behind bars, and to deport him. You could say, oh, well, all these other alleged crimes, and there's tons of evidence, well, hasn't been proven in a criminal trial. That's true, but we don't have to go through an entire trial if we don't want to. We can just deport him. Now, you might say they want to hold him because he's a threat to society behind bars awaiting trial. I think that would be a very good argument, but here's a federal judge saying, no, release him. So, in my opinion, as a non-legal expert, this needs to be appealed immediately. This man should be behind bars up until the point that he is convicted and put in prison for a long time, or deported from the country. But as I say, not a single day out free on our soil ever again for the rest of his life. And if we cannot make that happen in this country, as the president sometimes likes to say on these issues, do we really have a country? Do we really have sovereignty if someone in the country illegally with this alleged rap sheet can be ordered by federal judges to just be released? We have to have him out walking amongst us? No. He's in the country illegally. We should not have to tolerate this. I'm not talking about an end run around the law or disrespecting the rule of law. This is about respecting and upholding the rule of law and not making a mockery out of it. Because the left has made him one of the prominent faces of all of this, it is all the more important that he not spend another day as a free man in the United States. He needs to be made an example of, and he richly deserves it. Fix this. It is not acceptable. Enforce the law, for crying out loud.